Hey everyone, welcome to the review here. So what I'm going to do is just go through every problem. So this might be a little bit longer of a video, but feel free to skip through as you feel the need. So I'm going to go through and do each problem in preparation for the quiz on Thursday. So the first 6 problems here, 1 through 6, you're solving each equation by taking the square root. So you're solving for the variable. Now, you'll notice each variable in all of these problems is squared. It's an r squared or x squared or v squared or whatever it is, has a little 2. So remember, that's different when you get that all by itself. In order to get rid of a squared number, you have to take the square root. So I'll show you what I mean here. So number 1 and number 2 are super easy, okay? So we want to get this r squared to be all by itself. We want it to just be a plain r. But in order to do that, we have to take the square root. And whatever we do to one side, remember, we have to do the other. So that's why I'm square rooting both. So then on this side, I'm left with just r. But now remember when we did these problems, you can get a positive number and a negative number. So the shortcut to write it is just to put the plus minus in front, and then you just tell me what the square root of 64 is. If you have your factor sheet, it's right on the back of that. Otherwise, you could put it on a calculator, Google it, whatever, you're going to get 8. And your answer is just 8. Another way to write it is just to write r equals 8 and negative 8. Either way works, okay? Moving on. Number 2, same thing. Take the square root of both sides because I want to get the v squared by itself, so I'm left with just v on the left. Square root of 16 is a perfect square, so we can just put plus or minus 4. So 1 and 2 are super easy. You'll probably have one question on your quiz like this and one like the rest of these where you actually have to do a little bit of solving. You have to get the variable by itself, all that stuff. So number 3, moving right along. I want to get the r squared by itself, but this time I have a minus 10, so I have to move that to the other side. So to get rid of a minus 10, you do the opposite and add 10 to both sides. Now, when you add 10 to both sides, you're left with r squared equals 64. Now, this should look very familiar. Exactly like number 1. So square root both sides. You're going to get r equals plus or minus 8. And that's how you can write your answer. Okay, I'm just putting squares around that so you see my answer. Okay, number 4. I need to get v squared by itself. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And you would get v squared equals 81. Square root both sides. You're going to get v is plus or minus 9. And there's your answer to number 4. So I need to see this work. So on your quiz, you got to be able to show me that you're adding 8 to both sides. And you're taking the square root. Don't just give me an answer of r equals plus or minus 8. Now, the only one I'll give an exception for is 1 and 2. There's not much work to do except show me the square root. Okay? Number 5 and 6 require 2 steps to solve. There's probably one like this on the quiz. There's probably one like number 1 and 2, and then one like 5 and 6. So there's going to be a little bit more work to do this. One extra step, not a big deal. So the first thing we need to do is subtract 1 to both sides. So I now have 2x squared equals 32. Got to get the x squared by itself, so I got to divide by 2 now. So I'm going to have x squared equals 16, and then the last step is to undo the x squared by doing square root to both sides. So I'm going to get x equals plus or minus 4. And there's your answer. Okay, and number 6, I need to add 2 to both sides first. I'm going to get 9r squared equals 36. Divide by 9. R squared equals 4. Square root both sides. R equals plus or minus 2. And there's your answer. Okay, so you will have 2 questions on your quiz for just like this. Okay, so it's just a basic, you know it or you don't. So if you miss the answers, you don't get the credit. If you get both answers, remember there's 2 answers for every problem. Even though it only looks like I'm writing one that plus and minus means it could be a positive 4, it could be a negative 4. Okay, and then same thing here. It could be a positive 2 or it could be a negative 2. Either one will work. Okay, moving on to the next section, 7 through 10. There are 4 examples of this problem. You will have 2 on your quiz, just like this. Okay, remember these problems were super easy. They're already set up. This is what we call zero product property. It says solve each by factoring. They're technically already factored for you. So all you need to do is solve each parenthesis, the variable in each parenthesis. Okay, so basically what we're doing is taking each parenthesis, setting it equal to 0. So if I was to take this first one, I'm going to rewrite it, 3m plus 1, set it equal to 0, and solve for m. So I would subtract 1 to both sides, and I'm going to get 3m equals negative 1, divide by 3, and my m equals negative 1/3. That's one answer. Then I take my second parenthesis, m minus 2, set it equal to 0, add 2 to both sides, and you get m equals 2. Now remember, I gave you shortcuts for these when we did this a couple weeks ago. Problems like this one, where there's no number in front of the variable there, it's just other than 1, you can just take the opposite number and that's your answer. But a problem like this, where it's 3m plus 1, you can't just take the opposite. You can look and say, hey, it's a plus 1, and know your answer is going to be negative always. And same thing like with the red example here, where it was m minus 2, you know your answer is going to be positive. It's always the opposite of what you see there. Okay, so the first example, this one right here, okay, you will have to do a little bit of work. The second one, you can just take the opposite. Okay, so let's continue on here. So this one right here is the one I was talking about. There's no variable in front of the n, so I can just say, oh, it's plus 4, so the opposite of that, my answer is negative 4. There's one answer. This one, I have to do a little bit of work, and some of you might see a pattern here. I'm not going to tell you the pattern, but if you figured it out, then you can speed up the process. And then the last step's divide by 7, n equals 6 over 7, or you could just technically give me the decimal. I prefer the fraction, though, but if you give me the decimal, that's fine as well. So there's your two answers. Remember, you're going to have two answers for every single one of these problems. Okay, and the reason you're going to have two answers is because it's what we call a quadratic. That just means there's going to be an x squared or some kind of x squared in here. Now, you'll look and see, hey, there's no x squared in 7 or 8, but there is 1n right here and 1n over there. So there's technically n squared. Okay, moving on. Number 9 is about as easy as I can make it. Just looking at it, you shouldn't have to do any work. You should just be able to say, oh, that take the opposite of what I see, so that one should be negative 6, and this one take the opposite of that, and it's m equals 2, and you're done. There's your two answers. Okay, number 10, one of them's easy, so the second one's the easy one, so we'll just make that x equals negative 6, because it's the opposite. The first one, you just got to do a little bit of work. Subtract 1 to both sides. 5x equals negative 1. Divide by 5. X equals negative 1/5. The other thing I will point out for this section, you'll notice that this one, your answer is a fraction. When there's a number in front of x other than 1, it's a fraction. Up here, that one was a fraction. Right here, fraction, okay? So if there's a number in front of the x, it's probably going to be a fraction. Okay, so you'll have 2 just like 7 through 10 on the quiz. Number 11, we're going back to our factoring. So technically, you're going to get an answer that looks like how 10 looked, how 9 looked, how 8 and 7 looked, and then you're going to keep going and solve it. So remember, we did the A times C method way back at the beginning of e-learning. That was the first thing we did, what we called factoring. So remember, our A is right here. There's technically a 1 there, so we're going to take 1 times 30 and get 30. Find our factors of 30. Okay, there's our factors. 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Which of those will add to give me 11? And you would say plus 5 plus 6. And remember, we put 5 over our A, which is n, and 6 over our A, which is n again. And then we write our answer n plus 5 in parentheses and n plus 6 in parentheses, set it equal to 0. Now, we're not done. This looks just like problem number 9. Okay, we still got to solve and get an answer. So because there's no number in front of those n's, we can just take the opposite. So my answer is negative 5 for this one, and my answer is negative 6 for that one. And you're done. Number 12, we need to factor. So we take our 1 times 15 first, which gives me 15. Find our factors of 15. There's only two of them, 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. Which of those, when we add them together, will give me 8? Right? Remember, we wanted to add to give us the middle term, so we're going to pick plus 3 and plus 5. So we take our 3, we take our 5, we put an m under each one and write our answer m plus 3 in parentheses and m plus 5 in parentheses, set it equal to 0. And once again, there's no number in front of those variables, so we can just take the opposite. So it's going to be m equals negative 3 and m equals negative 5, and we're done. So you will have two problems just like these on the quiz. You have to show me this. A lot of you, when we did the last quiz with factoring, you wanted to use the photo math. It shows you a completely different way to do it that I did not show you, so I know for a fact you're using photo math if I see your answer the other way. I will not give you credit for that problem. It'll be wrong. So I need to see it done the correct way, which is this way. If you forget how to factor, go back to like week 2 or week 3 in the e-learning folder and watch my videos on how to redo that, okay? Some of you tried to take the shortcut. I'm not going to accept it on the quiz. These will be wrong. Okay, and then the last two questions are probably the hardest ones. Remember, this is what we call the quadratic formula. And remember, the formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now, I already went ahead and labeled my a, b, and c for each problem, and then we're going to go through and solve it. Okay, so I'll plug it in. So for number 13, remember, this means opposite of b. Right now my b is negative 5, so this is going to actually be a positive 5, plus or minus the square root negative 5. When the b is negative, put the negative in parentheses, okay? Minus 4 times my a, which is 5, times my c, which is negative 10. Put it all over 2 times 5. Okay, and then we would have to solve using a calculator and doing all that stuff. We can't just stop here. You're not done. You got to give me an answer. So it's 5 plus or minus, okay? This is 5 squared. It's going to give me 25. Minus 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 5 is actually going to give me plus 200. Divided by 10. Okay, then we got to go ahead and add 25 and 200, which is going to give me 225. Divided by 10. We got to find the square root of 225. Square root of 225 is a nice perfect square. It just turns to 15. Put it over 10. Then here's where we would split it into two problems. Remember, I did a green one where it's 5 plus 15 divided by 10. So I'll do that real quick. 5 plus 15 is 20. 20 divided by 10 is 2. So one of my answers is 2. The second problem, you need to subtract 5 minus 15 divided by 10. 5 minus 15 is negative 10. Negative 10 divided by 10 is a negative 1, and there are your two answers. Okay, so that's how you solve 13. 14 now. We're ready to do 14, so let me go back. The formula says the opposite of b. Well, my b is positive 4, so the opposite would have to be negative 4. Negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1, which is your a, times your c, which is negative 32, all over 2 times 1. Okay, now you got to go ahead and do some math in your head or on a calculator. Hopefully you're using a calculator. Okay, so 4 squared is going to give me 16. Negative 4 times 32. Well, I don't have a calculator handy, so I got to do it the old-fashioned way. That's 128. Okay. And then on the bottom, we just get 2, because 2 times 1. Okay, now I got to add up my 16 and 128, which will give me 144. The square root of 144 is a perfect square. It just turns to 12. Every single one of these on your quiz will be perfect squares. So you have to show me that. Negative 4 plus 12 divided by 2. Negative 4 plus 12 is a positive 8. 8 divided by 2 is positive 4. Then the second time you do it, it's the same thing, but instead of it being -4 plus 12, it's going to be -4 minus 12 divided by 2, which will give me a -16 divided by 2, which is in turn -8 for a final answer. And there is the review. I kind of went through those problems fast, so if you need to see me do it a few times, skip back on the recording. If you have specific questions on how to do these, please ask. You will need to do one screen recording for one of the quadratic formulas, 13 or 14. So problems like that, you will have to do a screen record, send it to me. Okay? You will have to screen record one of those two problems. You will have two of them on the quiz. So the quiz is only going to be 8 questions total. Okay? Not that long. So, make sure you know what you're doing on those, okay? I'm sorry, I said screen record on only those two. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. You will need to screen record on any problem on the quiz other than problems like 1 and 2. If you pick 1 and 2 to screen record, I will not count it. Okay, so I will tell you specifically which problems on the directions to screen record, and you'll send it to me. Otherwise, I want to wish you the best of luck on the quiz. If I don't hear from some of you have been pretty good about jumping on the Zooms and getting some help. Others, I haven't heard from you in a long time, but I'm hoping you understand this and you're good to go. And if I don't hear from you guys, I want to wish you all a great summer. Be safe. Enjoy. Get some rest. Enjoy the nice weather the best that you can while being safe. And hopefully we'll see you guys back in the fall, back under normal circumstances. Once again, Zoom session will be, I'll post a link on our school, it's on the agenda already, and I will also send a notification the day of, and you will be good to go. The quiz needs to be done by Friday night. If it is not done by Friday night, you will get a 0 on it. So please make sure you do it. Great. The semester ends Friday. So make sure you have it done. You should have it done Thursday, but I will leave it open until Friday. Okay? Good luck, and I will see you guys hopefully sooner than later.